Welcome to Home Care Matters, the show where we discuss all things home care, with discussions on important age-related matters and topics. Brought to you by Enriched Life Home Care Services, the #1 rated home care provider in Michigan by Top Rated Local.
Hello and welcome to Home Care Matters. Thank you so much for taking time out of your day to visit us here at the show. Today's episode, we have a special guest with us. Her name is Michelle, and she has had several family members who have experienced different forms of long-term care. And so we thought it'd be helpful for her to share some of her experiences with you. So right now, I'd like to welcome Michelle to the show. Michelle, thank you for joining us.
You're welcome. Thanks.
So why don't you start with the experiences your family members have gone through with long-term care, the different types of care?
Okay. Start with my grandmother. She was living with my mom after my grandfather passed, and my mom was her main caregiver. She had Alzheimer's, and as that progressed, she got to be too much for my mom to handle and went to an assisted living center.
Okay.
Probably was at the assisted living part of the building for a couple of years, and then they had notified us that her needs became too great and moved her, same building, but to the nursing center part of the building, nursing care.
Okay. So when you say her needs became too great, was that too great then for what they could provide for you in the assisted living portion?
Yes.
Okay.
I mean, they weren't really all that clear about it, but yeah.
Okay.
She wasn't able to really do anything for herself anymore, so.
Okay, so you didn't really have any options. They just said, this is what we need to do.
Right.
And, okay.
Yep.
All right, and how did she do once she went into the nursing home or the memory care wing?
Pretty much the same. I mean, she
Okay.
eventually passed away there.
Okay.
But, I mean.
Not much difference then?
No, not much difference.
Okay. And what other types of experiences have you had?
And then with my mother-in-law, when my father-in-law passed away, her 4 kids just decided that the house was too much for her, and she went into an independent living facility.
Okay. Was that more for downsizing purposes or for care or?
You know, I think they just thought the house was too much for her, and I think they thought it was kind of the only option to move her into some kind of facility, independent care or assisted living, and she didn't need really the care. She has a little macular degeneration, but didn't really need any full care, so went to the independent living facility, and that was 10 years ago, and she's still there.
Okay.
Her needs have become greater,
Okay.
but she is still there.
Now, when you say her needs have become greater, are they providing more for her now, or?
No, they've had to bring in care to care for her in her apartment there.
Okay. And you were sharing that, I think earlier you told me you had a sister-in-law who had.
Yes, and this is 2015, which was about 6 years after my mother-in-law went to the independent living. My sister-in-law got ill with a brain tumor, and my other sister-in-law wanted to move her into her home and take care of her.
Okay.
And at night wanted to sleep because she was taking care of her all day, and we were all kind of taking turns, but really needed to sleep at night. And a friend of hers had told her about home care, and none of us had known anything about home care until this point. So they did have home care come in at night and take care of her. With a brain tumor, her clock was kind of messed up, so she was up during the night and needed help doing many things. Her balance was terrible at that point, and so my sister-in-law was able to sleep.
Okay. What was your experience with the home care?
In theory, it was a great thing that none of us knew existed, and we had some problems with the company, but being our first time, didn't really understand. Sometimes people would not show up.
Right.
There wouldn't really be much communication with the office. We had one person come and things were missing at the end of her shift, various things like that.
Okay. So with your grandmother, your mother-in-law, then it was ultimately your sister-in-law in that order.
Yes.
It wasn't until then that the family learned of what home care was or about home care.
Right. No one knew about it. And, at that point, I remember saying to my sister-in-law, because it was her mother that was moved into independent living, I said, if we would have known about this, she could still be in her house.
Right.
She could still be in her house, 11 years later, where everything was comfortable and she knew where everything was. And yeah, it always was like, oh, well, if you need to put your loved one somewhere, it has to be assisted living or nursing care. Which one do they need? And
Right. Well, and the nice thing, I guess, for your grandmother's situation, a lot of assisted living facilities, they don't offer or have available an additional wing for memory care or rehab or skilled care. So families ultimately are then notified and said, informed, this is your choices. You either have to bring in an outside company to take care of your loved one, or they're going to have to move out and relocate. And quite often families don't know that going into assisted living.
Well,
they hear the word assisted and they think all
things
their
are
needs,
included.
all their needs are being cared for.
Really, nothing was included in assisted living except a meal. They'd go down to the cafeteria I think you go twice a day. And there were arts and crafts and activities like that, which my grandmother wasn't, doing. And if we wanted someone to come in and give her a shower, there was an extra charge or anything like that. Or, if, she got to the point where she needed to be fed. And that was the point where they said she needed to go to the nursing.
So really her needs didn't require a nursing home or a memory care facility. Her needs required more care, more assistance with ADL, your dietary needs, your bathing, grooming, dressing, toileting, that sort of thing. It wasn't that she required skilled care.
Right.
So it's a little surprising that they didn't give the family that option.
Right.
Yeah. Now, earlier you were sharing with us before we started that your mother-in-law had an experience that she needed help just really briefly, and she reached out to the family. And why don't you share that story?
Yeah. And again, this was when, she didn't really have any medical needs.
Sure.
She had, I think she fell, but it didn't really get too injured. But anyway, she had hurt her back, and the doctor had prescribed a lidocaine patch for her to put on. And my sister-in-law had taken her to the doctor. They got the lidocaine patch. She got her back into her apartment. Everybody lives about a half an hour away from where she lives.
So not a quick drive.
Right, not a quick drive.
Not convenient.
Not convenient. And there's usually traffic in the drive. But so she had called my sister-in-law and said, can you come back and put this patch on me? At this point, it's about 9:00 at night. And she's realized she can't reach what she thought she's going to be able to put it on. So my sister-in-law said, well, I'm home for the night. I don't really want to come back out. Can you call downstairs and see if somebody can do it? Because they have an extensive staff there. It's a very nice independent living facility. And she called and absolutely no problem. Sent somebody right up, applied the pain patch. We're in and out in just a couple of minutes. No problem.
Okay.
The following month on the bill was an extra $65 charge for
a 2-minute visit. Oh, yeah. Okay.
Apparently there's an hour minimum or something, and they get that amount. I have something, but yeah.
And you were sharing also recently, I believe it was your mother-in-law needed some additional care, and the facility said you had to bring in outside help for her situation as well.
Yes, she actually had a pretty bad fall.
Okay.
In her apartment, there's 2 pull cords. She got up from bed. We don't really even know what happened because she fell into her dresser and, was out cold. Pretty injured, never pulled the cord or anything. And I'm not sure if you don't undo your lock by 10 a.m. or something, then they do a check on you.
Okay.
If you just turn the lock and it goes to like green or something, is the system. And anyway, they came in and checked on her, and she's sitting in her chair and dried blood all down the front of her. She didn't know what had happened. But anyway, so after she had to go to the hospital, and then after that, she went to their rehab facility, and then after that, they said she still needed care, but her time at the rehab was up. That insurance allows, and so then we had to hire care to come in to provide care in her apartment.
Okay. And the facility couldn't provide the amount of care that she needed. You had to bring in an outside source.
Right.
Okay.
Yep.
One of the things we share with families when we meet with them is when you're looking at independent living and assisted living, make sure you're finding out exactly what your options are and what's available to you as you or your loved one's needs continue to grow. You don't want to get in a situation where you're finding out at the last moment that you either have to hire a company to now come into your assisted living or independent living facility to provide care, or that they don't provide what your loved one may need for care. And we run into this quite often. Many families who have chosen to go with the assisted living or independent living route, they find out after the fact that their loved one needs more care than what the facility is able to offer. So they're left with typically a couple of choices. Either their loved one has to move out, or they have to hire a company to come in. And a lot of examples that we have personally experienced, that care has to be 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So now you have double bill for the facility and then now for the home care provider. So it's always good, just make sure you understand clearly what the care is that they are able to offer and what the process is if your loved one's care starts to become more than what the facility is able to offer or provide for. Now, since you found home care towards the very end, after your grandmother and after your mother-in-law, it was ultimately for your sister-in-law. And I think it's fair to say your sister-in-law's care was far greater than what your grandmother or your mother-in-law needed with a glioblastoma.
Yes.
What would you want families to know, or anybody listening or watching this episode know about home care when they're looking at different options for their family members?
No, it's an option for one thing. Yeah. Because really in all of those cases, my grandmother could have stayed at my mother's house. And my mom could have just gotten some extra help. Yeah. Where then she could have left her alone to go and run her errands, or, even the nighttime care, because they would wonder about grandma getting up and wandering through the house. And if something were to happen, certainly in my mother-in-law's case, absolutely. She was in a house she'd been in for 60 plus years in a neighborhood that she'd walk to church, she'd walk to the bank. She had neighbors close by that, they all kind of kept an eye on each other, and she could still be there.
Yeah.
And then my sister-in-law, of course, home care is where we learned it. And there's also, you want to ask all the right questions of your home care company too.
Right.
And if we would have had the experience or known about it, we would have hired a company that we knew did background checks, and hire a company that came out and met the person and really got all the information and not just organized it on the phone.
Right.
And things of that nature. Just ask all the right questions, or how are they trained? What kind of training do they have? What will they be wearing? Even something simple as that. If they're wearing scrubs, great. Sometimes if they're dressing just however they dress day to day, you might have people showing up in interesting,
Sure.
It's questions like that.
Okay.
And just make sure the company is going to be involved.
Do your homework.
Absolutely.
Well, and All Home Care Matters is sponsored by Enrich Life Home Care Services, a home care provider. And I know for the way we do things here, our process is whenever we start with a family, we sit down and do an extensive background on the family's loved one that we're going to be providing care for, their medical history, the needs that they have, what medications they're on, what their abilities allow or don't allow them to do. And then we identify the staff that are going to best fit the situation that the care is needed for. And then before we ever start, we always meet with the staff and go through that extensive care plan and that assessment that we go through with the family. And then someone from our offices always go out to the home and introduce the caregiver and the staff to the family and to the loved one we're going to be caring for. And we're accessible 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, because providing care for somebody isn't something that can be done over the phone or on the fly. It's a very personal, intimate experience, because you're dealing with people and you want to make sure that their loved ones are being cared for to the best of the abilities that they need. All right. So we always recommend do your homework on whether it's an independent living facility, assisted living facility, or if your loved one's in rehab, like Michelle's grandmother, who no longer qualified to be in the assisted living wing of that facility and had to move over to the rehab. The reason she needed to move over did not qualify for needing medical care. It would have been a good option for a facility to offer a family to bring in an outside caregiver, whether it's a friend of the family or a company, so that she could have stayed in those familiar surroundings. Especially when you have a loved one dealing with dementia, the longer they can stay in their own home or their familiar surroundings, the better they're going to be and the more comfortable and safer they're going to feel. So we always recommend do that research, do your homework, ask those questions, before you sign up for anything, and make sure you know exactly what they can provide and what they cannot provide. Do you have any last words you'd like to share, Michelle?
No, just do your homework. Know your options, and there's more out there than just putting your loved ones in these facilities, especially nowadays.
So thank you so much for joining us today on All Home Care Matters. We hope you enjoyed the show. Our next episode is going to be a great topic, and this is going to be an episode talking about what are caregiver support groups. These are groups that we think, if you are a family member caring for a loved one, that you should always at least attend one time to see if it's going to be something beneficial for you as you're caring for your loved ones. And again, remember, assisted living, independent living, home care, and home health care, they all have different roles and they all provide different things. And it's important to understand and know what role your loved one needs in their care. Thank you so much from all of us here at All Home Care Matters. Remember, you can visit us at the show at allhomecarematters.com. There's a secure, fillable form there. If you have show ideas, questions, or comments, we would love to hear from you. And again, thank you so much.
Thank you for joining us today. We look forward to you joining us again on another episode of Home Care Matters. To learn more about the show and to connect with us, visit us at elhcs.com.